G'day guys and welcome back to our Kart Class Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing what separates elite drivers from the rest of the pack. Now, it can get quite frustrating for many parents, many kids, many drivers that we're just stuck in the mid-pack or we're stuck towards the back of the pack. And now, what's separating those top one or two drivers that are consistently there, not just these one-off, when you get to a home track or something, some kids have a bit of an advantage, but predominantly the kids that can go to any track in any conditions, wet, dry, damp conditions, and they're consistently at the front. What's setting them apart from, say, someone here who's in that mid-pack? Now, it's going to come down to a few things. We're going to look at the adaptability to changing conditions, not just someone who's just good in there, when the track's grippy and it's easy to drive. We want to look at the mindset. We want to look at the racecraft, and we want to look at how these drivers are preparing before the race event. So when it comes to adaptability, most drivers are going to do their practicing in the dry conditions. So we go to the track, typically when it's dry, and we're aiming for PBs. Now, what's going to separate those elite drivers is they're going to be out at the track no matter the condition. So whether it's wet, it's drizzling, it's half wet, half dry, it's not necessarily about the lap time. It's about building the skill set so that no matter what happens in a race, if it starts raining during the race, they're used to having slick tyres in the rain. If it's a drying track, and some drivers are going to elect to go to a wet tyre because that's the safest option, but the better drivers are going to go into the slick tyre, and they're just going to try and get around for the first couple of laps, and they know that once their tyres get heat and they hit that nicer dry line, that they're going to have far superior speed. So it's being able to adapt to any conditions. Now, so many times when I go to the track coaching, rain, hail or shine, we tend to not cancel on a coaching day because we don't know what we're going to get on a race day. And we don't cancel on race days when it starts to get a bit miserable. But like I said before, you go to the track on a nice day, 20, 25 karts on the track, everyone's happy, everyone's setting personal best lap times because the track's rubbering up. That's easy stuff. There's skill in that, but there's not a lot. Then you go on a wet day, no one's there. It's freezing, kids complaining, kids spinning off, gravel, engines getting torched. But that's what's making the driver. That's what's making an elite driver. It's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So there's a difference between driving in the easy conditions and there's a difference between finding it hard to drive in difficult conditions. Okay? So we need to be able to adapt to any conditions, and we can't just be this one-trick pony where when it's hot and sticky, we're quick. You need to be able to adapt to all the conditions, like I said, wet tyres, dry tyres, and not having the setup always perfect, because that's putting pressure on your parents or your coach or, the person who's mechanic on your car. You need to be able to drive around certain setup parameters. You can't just be, again, that one-trick pony where it has to be perfect for you to actually maximize your driving skill set. If, we make an adjustment and it's not right, okay, how do I change my driving style to suit the kart not being as nice to drive? If it's sliding more, brake a little bit earlier. Be a little bit more gentle in the acceleration. Try and change something to try and adapt to that kart setup not being in the perfect window. That's what's going to make an elite driver as well. All conditions, all setup adjustments, they're still maximizing the most from their package. Now, when it comes to a racecraft point of view, the elite driver is strategically planning their passes. Now, that's not to say that they're not going to pass 2 or 3 karts in a lap. If the opportunity presents themselves and they're going to not lose a lot of time, they'll be going for it. But the quickest drivers and the ones who consistently get through the pack without crashing, predominantly, is they're making their moves 2 or 3 corners in advance. They're thinking about those passes. So we know that some of the drivers that we race against consistently, some of them might be bad at starts, some of them might be early breakers, some might be attacking the corners too hard so that they slide coming out. You start to learn. And like I said, these elite drivers are thinking and they're planning what their drivers are going to do around them. And then what happens is it looks easy for them because they've strategically planned it in advance. They don't just approach a corner and go, I'm going to pass it now. No, they've thought about it. They're going to pass on a certain corner. It's going to screw that driver over. They get a buffer. They don't have to then defend the following corner. That's key. If you don't have to defend the following corner, you can actually build that margin on that kart. then they're stuck having to defend other karts behind them. So it's knowing when to pass, how to slow the other people around you down. And if you're having to pass through the pack and, if you've had to start from the back, passing on certain parts of the track that aren't going to slow you down too much. So these are the key things that are going to set apart that mid-pack driver to the front drivers. Now, the other thing around all this is that once you start doing it a little bit more consistently, being towards the front, you start to build that little bit more respect with your competitors. They're going to say, holy crap, such and such has passed me now. I know he's fast. Rather than racing that driver, I'm going to work with that driver. I'm going to push them on the straight to make them faster, make me faster as well. And then as they pass the driver, that's actually going to make it easier for me to follow them through. So you start to build that level of respect, and then people are going to be almost a little bit more gentle with you because they're going to let you do the hard work for them. So once that actually starts to happen, that's another game changer as well, because now you've got actually more drivers. Rather than wanting to race you, they're going to be working with you. So yeah, that's going to help you out a lot as well. Now, the main thing that separates the top drivers compared to the mid-pack drivers or the drivers that are aspiring to be towards the top is the mindset. Literally, you've got a driver at the front who's won a couple of races now, and they're confident. They go to the track and they're hoping/expecting to win. And then you've got the mid-pack driver that's nervous. They're the ones going, oh, God, I'm in the mid-pack. Nervous that the race starts, changing conditions. How am I going to pass such and such on certain corners? And so there's a level of invincibility around a driver who's won on multiple occasions compared to a driver that's never been in that position. And that's not to say that the mid-pack driver can't get to that point, but when they find themselves going further and further up the pack, that's when obviously more nerves creep in, and that's totally natural. That's actually not a bad thing at all. So it's the elite drivers that have that invincibility about them. They're going to go for moves that you don't even think is possible. They're going to go for race starts that the smallest of margins. If it comes off, it looks amazing. If it doesn't come off, it doesn't really matter, because even if they go back into the pack for a certain race, a following race, they have that belief and that mindset that they can get through the pack. So that's the tricky part here, is that to go from the mid-pack, which, when I started, I was, towards the midfield to backfield for a couple of years. And my dad was very, positive about, if you do A, B, and C well, you will be moving up the pack. Like, you'll be faster. You'll find it harder for other karts to get around you. Obviously, with more speed, you'll have more opportunities present themselves to you. We did a lot of laps in the rain. Obviously, we only had slick tyres back then, so I always felt relatively confident in the rain. But it's that mindset of, I'm going to be going there. I'm really confident with the car package. I'm really confident with the setup. Even if it's not perfect, I've got the skill set to get around the setup adjustments that we may make. And I know my opposition. So I'm going to start strategically planning before the race. So during the week of the race, I'm starting to map out how I'm going to beat these guys. Now, I wasn't doing that necessarily when I was 10 years old. But when I became, more towards my teenage years and definitely in the senior years, I would already map out, how the weekend would unfold, qualifying position, which karts to be following, or if I was confident that I could just do the laps by myself, I'd just go straight out the gate and just drive my own laps. Didn't need a slipstream to gain that 1 or 2 tenths. So it's having the ability to map out your weekend before you actually arrive and knowing competitors, where their strengths and weaknesses are. How can you combat that with your strengths and weaknesses? And that's what sort of sets those drivers who you see continually winning. They're the differences. That's what they're doing, I would imagine. Well, that's what I've done previous years to constantly stay at the top. Now, once you get to the top and you've done it maybe, for a few months, or you're leading a championship over a course of a year, you can't sort of just stabilize and just think that you've reached the top. That's great. Now, people are hunting you down. So once you've reached the top status where you're the main guy in the class or the main girl, it's more about, okay, if I stay stagnant right now, people are constantly going to the track to try and improve their speed, improve their skill set. So I need to then keep raising the bar myself if I want to stay at the top. So it's really important that you are still doing laps in all the conditions. You're still trying different things on a setup day, practice day, so you can still find what works in certain conditions. It's still, another thing that was working quite well is that people were trying to follow me on the track to try and obviously see where I was driving, where I was braking, accelerating, and so on, and overtaking. Don't let them follow you. Like, if you're the fastest person on the track, don't go around anyone else on the track. There's no point of showing someone else how to go fast on the track. So keep that up your sleeve. Drive half a lap behind someone in practice. Do not let them follow you when you are the fastest kart on the track. So these are the little 1%ers that are going to set you apart consistently so that you can stay at the top for longer, and they're going to make it harder for the opposition to catch you. Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast on, what sets apart the elite drivers to the mid-pack drivers and how you can actually get there over time. And if this resonates with you, then, like I said, feel free to leave it a review or give it a 5-star review where possible, because it's going to reach more of the karting community out there. Until next time, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. I'll speak to you guys soon. Cheers.